Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Monday. It is February the 9th, and welcome to our program. We're going to be talking about something that has been bothering me all weekend, and I can't shake it. I can't get it out of my head. I can't get rid of the concept that we've lost the middle ground in America. There was a middle ground. I've been trying to trace where it went, because there was a time when regular Americans, to the tune of about 80%, agreed with most of the things that happened. They basically wanted the same things. They may have disagreed with how to get to it. And I actually don't think that went away. I think that the political parties that represent this country have actually lost where that is. And so it's my ongoing contention that people have not changed as dramatically as anyone would have you believe. I think that the thing that happened was our political Overton window and the shift walked away from where regular people sit. And so the number of people that are feeling disaffected and unrepresented and flat out dejected by the process, it's high. The number of people that I keep meeting in just my day-to-day life when I start talking about it, and of course, politics never used to come up 25, 30 years ago. That just wasn't polite. You wouldn't discuss politics because who did that? Kind of like you didn't bring up religion. And crazily enough, everybody I meet kind of falls in the same space. I hate both teams. And I don't think that either team is doing what we expect them to do. So I have this strange idea. I had a conversation with Alex Jones for about 40 minutes over the weekend, and Alex and I were talking about this, and I kind of arrived at what I think is a moment of clarity. And I want to run it against you guys, and you guys let me know what you think in the comments below. So we'll do that in just a second here. I've also got some criminal malfeasance on behalf of the FBI director as well. Non-stop. No matter what I do, I walk away, I stop looking at it. The next thing that happens, somebody does something, they pop up in the news, we get a name that's going to be of national prominence, and then the dirt just starts dumping in. So over the weekend, you guys probably missed it over on the X feed and on the social media feed. I hope you were doing something else than watching like the ugly exposés that we continue to do on senior management in the FBI. But I've got a story of corruption and the classic compromise. So we'll do some of that in just a minute too, because most of you guys probably will never see this otherwise. It certainly isn't going to be covered on any other mainstream outlets. And so this small little group here we're going to talk about it, and you guys can share it as far and wide as you like. All right, let's talk about winter, which I think is over here in Texas, but then I've been surprised before. We could get a cold snap in a little bit. If you guys are worried about preparation, the best time to be preparing is when things are okay. If you wait until you need it, you're probably screwed. I was wearing bare feet walking around in the park yesterday, and then I saw my buddy who's up in Montana and another one up in Wisconsin, seeing that they have snow on the ground. So some of you are still getting winter. And as winter continues to go on, the possibility of power outages and deathly cold, which could kill you, is a real problem. It's something you should look ahead. And if you're living in a place like Florida or Texas where we don't regularly get real winter, power outages actually become a lot more dangerous because we don't have the other stuff to go along with it. One of the things you can do is get a Vesta off-grid space heater from My Patriot Supply. It's a space heater that doesn't run on electricity. It doesn't use propane, so you can actually burn it inside. It runs on what's called canned heat. It's an indoor safe fuel, and it also will let you cook your food, which is awesome. You can stash it away in your closet. You don't have to think about it when it's flip-flop weather, and then suddenly if a cold snap comes in and breaks everything because nobody here knows how to deal with it, suddenly you've got an option to not only keep your family safe and warm, but you also can cook your food on it, which is a pretty cool option. And it is part of the winter survival kit that My Patriot Supply is offering as we come into the end of winter in some places, but maybe the continuation for those of you that live in real winter places. Check out mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle. Link in the show description. There's going to be one on the screen. You guys can always scan the QR code that you see on the screen as well. The offer doesn't last forever, so check it out. It is mypatriotsupply.com/KYLE, mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle. Get yourself one of these things. Don't worry about, heavy snows and power outages when they happen. Think about them before they do, and then get yourself squared away and check out the winter survival kit from My Patriot Supply. All right, we're going to get into today's program, and we're going to kind of wax poetic about what could have been and what used to be and what is clearly not going on today. Here we go. So today is February the 9th of 2026. And I can't help but look at this, which is a 3-year time capsule for me. And for those of you that are part of this program, we really launched the podcast in earnest on the first day or the first week of January of 2023. So we're in the 3-year range right now, going into our 4th year, but we just kind of celebrated the 3rd year birthday. And one of the things that helped launch this podcast into any degree of prominence and having any audience at all is that I did a bunch of Fox News hits and a bunch of other media. And this was the thing that my buddies and I referred to as the thermal exhaust port. If you can't see on the screen right now, I have an article that I wrote, which was, I think, very apolitical. It didn't have very much to do with politics at all. It had to do with explaining bureau culture and the FBI and why it was so dangerous under the previous administration. But it wasn't because the previous administration created that dangerous FBI. It's because the FBI is always dangerous and always has been. And if you listen to some of the stuff that I've been saying, is that there are sins in every single decade of our federal law enforcement, and they go all the way back to before it was even called the FBI. And that's relevant because as I sit here today, people on the political right, the so-called MAGA types and the MAGA influencers, they're very mad that I continue to say the same thing that I said 2 years ago and 3 years ago, and that I came out and said on Dan Bongino's podcast 4 years ago. The stuff that I said is still true. The agency continues to do what is convenient for the agency. That's what a self-licking ice cream cone is, which is an ongoing sort of expression and joke in Washington, D.C. The reason it's dangerous is because it doesn't serve any of the masters that you'd expect. And so this article that's on the screen here, the FBI doubles down on Christians and white supremacy in 2023. It should be relevant today as well, because that same FBI exists and the same people that serve in that FBI exist. And none of them have been fixed. We haven't fixed the problem with federal law enforcement. Just because you've changed the people at the top and maybe you've gotten rid of some of the people at the bottom doesn't mean you did the most important thing, which is change the culture and change the management. And by the way, I think America's dealing with that right now too. I'm going to give you some examples of a person whose name popped up in the news because of the kidnapping of a mainstream news personality's mother. This is the Guthrie kidnapping that's happening in Arizona. And so the person that is in charge of the office that's handling that for the FBI is a guy named Heath Janke or Yankee. I don't know how you pronounce it. It's Janke. And I didn't know him, not personally. I know people that knew him. We're going to talk about why these things keep happening. And whenever somebody gets exposed, like a prominent name pops up in the FBI, we suddenly go like, okay, well, who is this person? And the story is almost universally bad. There's always some sort of evil crap that they were involved in over the last few years, because the minute that they get into a position to be able to do the right thing, the only people that are being selected for these roles are the exact opposite of what you would hope. They never want to do the right thing, and they're always promoted by both sides, whoever's in charge, to do the wrong thing, because compromise and compromat is sort of the name of the game. Gotta put the phone in the Faraday case so it doesn't go off right now. This story is still a problem. The same FBI that leaned on the Southern Poverty Law Center and called people who are Christians, and specifically people that are Latin Mass Catholics, potential white supremacists, and thought that they should go and invade those churches to recruit sources so they could mitigate white supremacy, those people still exist. Nobody there lost their job. Nobody has taken a hit for this story, which was chaotic when we released it. And what you guys don't know is that there's an approved narrative of what we can and can't say in media. You probably do know this, but like, I'm going to give you a real concrete example. I started writing up the story. I had the documents to prove what I was saying. And Fox News didn't want to run it. And I reached out to Daily Wire. And Daily Wire said, submit to us what you've got, and then we'll decide whether or not we're going to write something. And I said, well, you don't even know what you're looking at. And none of you have any experience with FBI intelligence products. So how on earth could you write about it if you're writing about it in the blind? You don't know what the significance of this is. So I'll write it for you, and I'll give you a piece, and you guys can edit it to whatever, discretion you require, and you can vet it against what's on there. Put it as an editorial. Put it as a letter to the editor. Put it as a guest column. It doesn't matter. And they said, we can't just deputize you as a journalist. This was an actual interaction that we had with Daily Wire, that I had. And so I finally ended up talking to Tracy Beans, who popped up in my feed over on True Social back when I was using that platform. And we had a couple of conversations over DMs. We ended up having a phone conversation. And I said, I have this thing, and I think it's really important. And I think it represents all the wrong. And it doesn't really matter who's in charge. And so she ran it, which was pretty courageous in some ways, because there's some liabilities on publishing government documents, as you guys can tell. The Washington Post just had a reporter, had their house raided because of this stuff. And she ran it, and it made it to the people in Congress. And I was cited over and over again, never asked to go and testify in front of Congress, but regularly cited because of the things that I wrote in this particular piece. Because one person who's not accountable to mainstream media, who's not accountable to any particular political party, had the nuts to do it. And this person doesn't have nuts at all because it's a lady. It's a feminine lady. What happens when you expose a story like this? Where does it go? I'll show you where it goes. This is how it opens. This is the shot, right? And then we'll do the chaser. And the chaser is this. The guy who was in charge of the field office that did this was a guy named Stanley Meador. And he was named as the Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security, and he's being praised by the Virginia Police Chiefs Association as being a great example, keeping all Virginians safe, and it's a critical mission to the Commonwealth. He says, as a former federal law enforcement officer, I know that this success requires leaders who know how to collaborate with communities and law enforcement agencies. He also apparently knows how to sign off on people infiltrating churches in violation of the First Amendment, with no particular articulation that a crime actually took place. This is why nothing changes. This is why people feel like we're screwed. This is the instinct that nothing is getting better. So let's talk about the political divide in this country. And I'm gonna kind of wax poetic on why I think this is going down. In the United States, in my lifetime, it has been pretty much the standard that as you ran for office, in order to win a primary, and we are in primary season right now for the midterms, in order to win the primary for your party, you have to push hard on the things that matter to the base of your party. And so if you're a Republican, you hammer small government and tax cuts and individual freedom and autonomy. And if you're on the political left, if you're a Democrat, then you push things like collective ideals, like funding healthcare for everybody and, socialist type things and policies that will throw more public assistance. You think of entitlements and expanding that and the welfare state and all the things to try to help people out for maybe good reasons, let's say, like maybe good emotional reasons. You feel like it makes people feel like they're contributing. So everybody pushes the side of the aisle that they're supposed to be on in order to get the people in the base behind them. And then when you get into the actual election, the general season, in order to win the general, you have to, what they say, tack back towards the middle. You kind of tighten up your sheets and you lean back towards the sort of centrist position because the American people generally lean in this middle, squishy left or right, but not really hard one way to another. People don't live on the extremes in the general population. And so in order to get the actual vote, it's whoever gets the most attention, has the most money, is able to get the most common ground with the average voter. The people on the hard left, you need them to think you're hard left or right. Same thing on the right? People on the fringes, those 10, 15% of really, really active folks inside those movements. And then to get that 75 or 80% of the vote, many of whom are independents, the gettable voters are generally speaking independent. You got to get those people right down the middle so you get to the squish part. I think that changed. And I'm seeing our chat say that moderates don't exist anymore. I actually don't think that's true. I think moderates are everywhere. What I think happened, though, is that we lost the idea that moderates, the squishy left and right of center, are even in this balance that we're looking at. I think America has more or less, the average person in America doesn't pay attention to politics, which are a lot of people. And when I was talking to Jones over the weekend, he was blown away that many people that I used to work with in the Bureau, they have no concept of what folks like us who are hyper focused on the politics of the world and what's going on. They don't know that there was a Hunter Biden laptop story, and they definitely don't know that it got suppressed, and they definitely don't know that it had some sort of bearing on the 2020 election, for example. They just don't know it because it's not interesting to them. There's plenty of moderate type Americans that just are not aware and paying attention. But here's what I think happened that was so crazy. Over the last 30 years, since the 90s, let's say, the reason why Donald Trump is a Republican is because the left has migrated further and further to the left, harder and harder, leaning on communism, leaning on socialism, Marxism, call it whatever you want to do, a collectivist idea that there's an oppressor and an oppressee, that there is a battle, not for class and not for race, but to be able just to push things more and more towards less individual responsibility and more government involvement and central planning and all the things that go along with it. And the Republicans walked along with them, and they kept the same distance that they did in, let's say, the 90s. In the 90s, we had the middle, which you're seeing on the screen right now, that kind of divide. You had the left and the right kind of tugging on each other, and we kind of ended up in the middle, which is why if you look at someone like a Bill Clinton, many of Bill Clinton's policies were further to the right than current and today's average Republican. Certainly more than our president. I would suggest to you that Donald Trump is further to the left on a lot of things, especially social issues, than Bill Clinton was. And that's kind of crazy to think about. But I think Donald Trump probably was like that in the 90s too. He didn't change a whole lot. He was probably to the left of a Bill Clinton, at least at the time that he was being elected. And so when we look at this divide, I think the left continued to march left. I think the right stayed the same distance. Sometimes you guys have done this where you're driving, you don't know how fast you're going, but you're watching the car in front of you and you're keeping the same distance between you and the car in front of you. That could mean that you're doing 85 miles an hour at some point in time and you weren't trying to speed. You weren't trying to break the speed limit by 10 or 15 or 20 miles an hour. But what you ended up doing was you kept pace with what was around you. And I think that's where we've gone today. But the wild thing is the middle stayed where it was. And that middle is now to the right of the American, quote unquote, right party. The GOP representing the American right, it doesn't represent the right at all. It represents basically 90s liberals. It is a 90s liberals position. And so the people that are in the squishy middle, they're actually to the right of that space. And when that's the case, that's how you have a midterm crisis right now. Because everybody does the same thing. You appeal to the base. You show like your hard credentials of right or left, and then you get to the middle, and you go to the midterm or you go to the actual general election, and you tack to the middle. The problem is now the right doesn't know where the middle is, and so what you saw in 24, I think, is Donald Trump appealed to the base. He became the candidate for president, and he did something people don't normally do. He actually had a sense that the middle was to the right of where the Republican Party was. And so he pushed harder on things like immigration and enforcement. He pushed harder on things like law and order. He pushed harder on things like personal accountability and individual issues. Making, quote unquote, America constitutional, making America great again means you have to actually look back. Where was the middle in the 90s? And he appealed to that, which actually was to the right of the GOP's position, which I will call, generally speaking, bacon cheeseburger nationalism. Which is to say, you don't have to say that you're a Christian. You just basically have to live by those Christian ideas and values. Even if you don't know where they came from. I know where they came from, and you know where they came from. But if you don't know where they came from, it's okay. If you want to treat others as you would like to be treated. A lot of these things, by the way, they play really, really well on the political left as long as you don't introduce that poison pill of Christianity, which makes them immediately go, oh, religion. No. As long as you don't say religion, that's correct. So Donald Trump appealed to that, and he won. And the reason why the midterms are going to be such a disaster and why I'm looking forward to seeing, or not looking forward per se, but looking ahead and seeing this major stumbling block is because they didn't actually continue to rule. They didn't actually administrate the government or execute in the way that was campaigned on in 24 and started off 25. And I've had a couple of shows done over and over again right now where we keep going back to Agenda 47. Agenda 47 is not wild. In fact, I would suggest to you that it is middle of the road for the 1990s in politics in America. And Donald Trump recognized that middle of the road position, which would normally be the squish that you would have tacked to the left from a Republican position, he actually tacked to the right from the current Republican position. And then they didn't continue it. and it got weaker. And so people that are independent voters are turned off because they voted for something. They voted for the squish of 30 years ago, an aspiration, and they didn't get it. And when that doesn't happen, when it doesn't actually materialize, and people don't see anyone else messaging exactly what it was that they were supposed to do. Nobody is messaging that piece, not in any meaningful way. And we've seen what you did with the time. And you cannot continue to have people say, if you don't vote for us, then it's all over again. We're getting outraised. We're getting out fundraised. We're in critical danger. America will fall apart if you don't do what we need you to do. And there's nothing more indicative of that problem than this picture, which came out during the Super Bowl. And there it is. Donald Trump and Lindsey Graham leaning over his shoulder, both with shit-eating grins on their faces. If you're a conservative, if you're even a regular person from 30 years ago, which is kind of what I aspire to be, just a regular person who didn't radically change over the last 30 years, I stayed put. I still think that men are men and men should be masculine and they should do regular masculine things. Had a whole funny conversation with Jones on Friday while I was on InfoWars talking about jobs that put calluses on your hands being masculine, and sitting here doing what I do not being a quote unquote real job. It might be hard. It may not be something that everybody can do. It doesn't mean there's no value in what I'm doing today. But I don't consider it a real job. And I've said that to people who are attorneys, and I've said it to people who are in media, and they all kind of bristle at it like, oh. But I came from this work ethic where my dad, who used to dig holes all the time in the backyard with a shovel and would sweat with no shirt on and look like a freaking, like a monster out there, covered in mud and trying to get a perfect ditch or trench to be able to lay down pipes for, I don't know, irrigation or whatever. I still believe in that sort of ethos, which was normal in the 50s and the 60s, the 70s and the 80s when I was coming up. And today, there are people who look down on the idea of using your hands to be able to build or do something. And the people that don't, those are my people. I can pretty much guarantee that Lindsey Graham has not dug a trench, at least not an actual trench, nor used a shovel in any sort of non-sexual way. Maybe ever. I don't know when he was masculine, but that might be these are the two softest men that you could find when it comes to doing manual or physical or masculine labor. So I don't know how to deal with that. I don't know how to square those things. And they're out there appealing to give us money, help us win. You can't do it when you haven't actually used the time that you had. At some point in time, people start waking up and going, I don't want to participate in this system. And so what you'll have is the fringe left, the fringe right. There's more of the fringe left than there is of the fringe right. And the people that were gettable voters, the independent types, are going to just stay home. And that happens oftentimes in the midterms when they see that things are not done right. But they're going to happen in a shockingly bad way in November this year, I think. That's it. It's not even that complicated. It's that you let down a base, you promise something that was to the right of today's current politics because the idea of make America great again aspired to something 30, 40 years ago that regular people could have got behind. And you chose Lindsey Graham over a Tom Massey or a Rand Paul. And you've done it very, very publicly.
Every Republican and Democrat to vote as to whether or not we should eliminate sanctuary cities. If we don't, we'll never end the fraud. How can you help? You can pray. If the Republican Party is wrong with God, no amount of money will help us. You can volunteer. You can make phone calls. You can knock on doors. But you can give. I've been outraised twice in the last 2 quarters. They're killing us money-wise. I'd rather have $10 from a million people than one guy give me $10 million. Please go to lindseygraham.com tonight and give what you can and do it every month until the election. There are millions of people watching. If you can give $10, $20, whatever you can give, I'm going to take half that money and give it to my fellow Republicans to hold the Senate. If we hold the Senate, we get judges through. If we have the Senate, I'll be Judiciary Chairman in 27, and we'll get the train running again for judges. LindseyGraham.com. You can pray, you can volunteer, but please give. We're getting wiped out financially. I don't know where the hell all this money is coming from, but everybody out there, if you can help tonight. The money goes to a good cause. It's going to save our country. God bless Donald Trump. We're not backing up. We're going to be rational. We're going to work to turn down the temperature, but we're not going back to Biden policies.
Pass on all that. Not interested. Did he say lindseygraham.com? Did he just say that? Because that's what I heard. Interesting when that stuff kind of sneaks out, doesn't it? You know, things that are top of mind awareness, I guess, for you. Lindsey Graham looks like he's upset. He sounds like a televangelist preacher. Just send your money here with your prayer requests, and we're going to make sure that you get the healing that you need. We're going to solve all the problems that we haven't solved before, because this time it's different. Because this time I might be in charge of the judiciary. Wow. I can't think of anything that I want less. And I don't know any people that look at Lindsey Graham and go, you know what I think? That's a guy. That's the guy that's going to be the squishy that I want. He's not a rhino. He's a middle-of-the-road Republican that wants what? Wars? Tons of spending? Interventionism? All over the place? What do we call it? The boomer war boner that is permanently erect for throwing money into conflict and maybe sacrificing young men's lives into things that are stupid. It's the opposite of what Trump ran on. Trump ran on being the president of peace, de-escalating. And that guy's out there whispering in his ear, and he's showing up at the Super Bowl, leaning over. You are judged by the company you keep. Donald Trump will be judged by this company. The people on the left think, Lindsey Graham is evil for the war thing. The people on the right kind of think the same thing. And they also think that he's a closet homosexual doing a bunch of disgusting things, immoral things behind the scenes. So if people think those ways about you, whether or not they're accurate, I've heard all the rumors you guys have. But if that's the thing that you believe, and that's the guy that you want to keep company with, and you want to be the quote unquote most conservative president of my lifetime, which I keep seeing the MAGA type people, nope. You crap on a Thomas Massey or a Rand Paul at a prayer meeting of all things. And you hang out with Lindsey Graham, that's who you're palling around with, that's who you're going to be judged by. And there's going to be a ton of people that are otherwise gettable voters that look at this and go, no thanks, not interested, I'll pass. That's why this little clip from Friday's show and why this thing that keeps floating around, it's going to be a real problem. And all of this stuff ends up coming back towards Epstein, which means it all comes back towards a DOJ that has not been recaptured and it's operating on its own. And I can't prove, but it sounds totally reasonable to me that our DOJ, that our FBI as it stands today, are actually doing this as a discrediting op, because none of the names that are involved in doing that are ever going to surface and look like a problem. Do you realize that the chief, the special assistant for operations for Chris Wray, who most people would have demonized on the political right, Chris Wray's special assistant for operations was a woman named Shannon Perry. She also apparently took on the job of doing the Epstein censorship, which you guys are finding out was very, very problematic in the names that they chose to and didn't choose to censor. So that millstone is going to continue to hang around these guys' necks. Why don't you go to a prayer meeting and then call people a moron? Because that's what I remember Christ saying. This proves further and further. Donald Trump, as a 90s Democrat, he can be sacrilegious. He is not representing some sort of Christian nationalist position, which is what a lot of people thought was going to happen. Most pro-life, this, and all that. That's not the case. He's just a 90s Democrat that's slightly to the left of where Bill Clinton was. So this shouldn't shock people, but it is demoralizing for people that wanted to fall in the middle.
Is an automatic no. No matter what, if we did welfare reform, if we did the greatest thing in history for religion, no matter what we did, no matter how good it is, greatest tax cuts, and we just did the greatest tax cuts in history, he voted against. He voted. Now, no matter what we do, this moron, no matter what it is, we could put them all together. I think, Mike, what would you say the top 5 things? Name them. We'll put them in one bill, and we'll put them before we get 100% vote, except for this guy named Thomas Massey. There's something.
What a waste of energy. What a waste of energy when you're looking out there into the space and you think, this is where I'm going to put it. I'm going to pal around with a Lindsey Graham, and I'm going to take a crap on Tom Massey, of all people. You could ignore him. That'd be fine. But he can't do it. Folks, if you guys are watching right now, if you're watching live on Rumble, if you're watching live on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. We appreciate that. YouTube, guys, you guys are great about doing it. Rumble, you guys keep us on the leaderboard. It keeps us showing that even though we have a small show that has never once been promoted by the platform that we're on, you guys make it relevant. We're in the top 50 videos pretty much every time that we stream. So that's appreciated. If you're on X, join us on one of the monetized platforms. If you're listening and you're not watching, try us on Spotify so you can get the video too. Some of this stuff is worth seeing. It's, the visuals are part of the show, and you guys can dance in and see them real quickly with just the push of a button on Spotify. KyleSeraphinShow.com. You may hear an ad from that platform right now. I want to show you a couple other things. Let me show you what's really problematic. When Newsmax is not on your team on this one, When Newsmax runs away from the thing that you're saying, that should be a problem for you. When they're sensible, I think Newsmax is supposed to be like the hard right. And they're saying the same thing I'm saying. This is Carl Higbie, former SEAL, saying a lot of the same things I'm saying in a way that's accessible maybe to a quote-unquote MAGA audience, because that's who it's appealing to. This is not the fight that's going to be won. And this is why you're going to see disasters in November. But not disasters for me. And it's not my team. And it's not a lot of your team either, because you're looking and you're saying, this doesn't even represent me. I don't care what a Lindsey Graham thinks. I'm not going to send money to Lindsey Graham at lindseygraham.com. I'm not sending that cash because I'm sitting it out. I'll just see what happens next.
People like Rand Paul and Thomas Look, I don't agree with them on everything, but they're not anti-Trump. They're anti-DC trash bills that some swamp creature got in Trump's ear and told him it was a good idea. Something that was good for the swamp, but doesn't help you and I. I mean, it does butt kiss for the American people. It's because of the same power struggles and the infighting that lost the House in 2018, and we're right on track to do that again. This infighting is the number one thing that cost Trump major progress in his first term, and it's doing it again. Republicans were too busy bickering and inside BS and clamoring for higher titles, stabbing each other in the back, that we let Democrats run the show from the minority, and we're doing it again. And the fact call your legislator and tell them how PO'd you are right now. I know I have. I have a Democrat for a congressman. And the fact that there is so much infighting, whether it's Greg Bovino's hardline deportation raids in Minnesota versus Tom Homan's less abrasive pressers, I don't really care, okay? I hope the most successful person wins. I do care, though, about getting all the illegals out, all of them, not just the violent ones. You can start with them, but that's what I was promised, all of them. Or Ed Martin versus Todd Blanche. Ed Martin was put in his position by the President of the United States, and somehow Todd Blanche just demoted him. Why? I don't know. But not your job, Todd. I spoke to 5 people on both sides of this internal struggle in the DOJ fight today. It's the same infighting. People jostling for position, more worried about their title. If someone's doing a good job, they got to push them down rather than lift them up. And I'm just sitting there saying, just arrest somebody.
Who would be doing the arrests? That's the question. What organization, what part of our federal government does things like arrests? And which one of them continues to be a problem and be the backstabbing group that is making Donald Trump look less credible? And we think it's DOJ, it's FBI, it's my former ex-girlfriend. This is something, he just brought up Ed Martin. Some of the back and forth about Ed Martin has been about what happened with him, why he's not being successful in his de-weaponization, the weaponization working group at DOJ to try to stop weaponized government. The thing that I was pointing out in 2023, 3 years ago yesterday. Okay. Ed Martin put this out this morning. All of this chatter about Todd Blanche and me is fake news. I'm proud to work for real Donald Trump with Pam and Todd, that's Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche, for historic year of Trump mercy. 2025 Trump pardons gave victims of weaponization life. Let's talk about what the president has done and what he'll do this 250th year in America. It's fake news, apparently. Except it's not fake news. This is a gun to your head. You have to go out and put this stuff out. You have to go do what we say or you're going to lose your access. Well, what good can you do with access if your access is not yielding results? And the results are minimal. They got pardons done. They still haven't pardoned Joe Biggs, who has a Purple Heart and bled for this country. He can't get his pension. He can't get his VA disability. He can't even get medical treatment. So he can't support his daughter, who's a young child. He was removed from prison and then what? Left to die on the street? That's what we're going to do to these people? We can't even get a pardon for Joe Biggs, who did nothing violent on January 6th. Cool story. The problem with these things is that this thing, especially this is fake news, that tells me that it's real. Because apparently when he says things like fake news, I'm going to go to something else here, which is pretty wild. He also tweeted out this. This is him posting amazing admission, fake news is fading away. And he's quoting a satirical post that I don't think he knows is satirical. Maybe it's an age thing. Maybe he does know it's satirical and he's giving us a little inside tongue-in-cheek message. This was a person called Jean Parmesan. Jean Parmesan. I always say Parmesan because I think it's funny. I do that with my kids. And his post said, I was hired by the Washington Post in 2017 to cover how bad Trump is. Nobody likes him, particularly through the lens of homosexual communism. Today I was laid off. That's a satirical post. That's not real. That's pointing out the ridiculousness of some of the people that might be at the Washington Post. And Ed Martin is sharing it. I don't think he's sharing it ironically. I think he thought that was real. Unless he's saying that it's fake news and he's discrediting the Todd Blanche post, which is possible. Why are these bad actors still in there? Why are these people getting away with this stuff? Todd Blanche, Democrat forever. People inside Trump's cabinet. We pointed it out the other day. But how about the Treasury Secretary? His Treasury Secretary worked for Soros for 20 years. Helped bankrupt the Bank of England. Scott Bessent. A so-called married gay man. That's not a 90s Democrat position. Bill Clinton wouldn't have stood for gay marriage back then. You can go back 30 years ago and see how crazy that would be. And they have kids that they got from surrogacy. They paid a woman to rent out a uterus. That's wildly left-wing stuff from only a few years ago. That two men who are boomers would have babies that they bought from some woman that they got to use as an incubator. That's like the stuff of science fiction nightmares. And that's in your cabinet. Or how about Lutnick, who's at the Commerce Department? Who's all over the place in the Epstein files and apparently said there's more and more left-wing sources that are coming out. Suddenly they care about this stuff. They're like, oh my God, he said he had no business dealings with Jeffrey Epstein, but it turns out he had a bunch of them and they were going a lot longer than he said they were because what? They thought they were never going to come out? You wonder why these files didn't come out the way that people thought? It seems like it was a concentrated effort to protect maybe not Donald Trump specifically, but people in his orbit, including people maybe even in his cabinet, from what I can tell. And there are millions and millions of files. And I talked to Jones on Friday on InfoWars because everyone's trying to make sense of like, what is it? How do we understand what happened there? I'll tell you real simply. The FBI gave you a data tranche. They gave you 3 million files because they were like, here's a bunch of stuff, a-holes. You figure it out. We're not going to tell you what the case was, what the predication was. We're not going to put them in serialized order and show you why we gathered each evidence and we put it into the file and why you even's there, what the explanation was. Nobody did that. Imagine if the FBI and the DOJ did what we recommended, what I recommended over a year ago. Pull the case agents in, including the people that were in retirement, give them some sort of incentive structure, pay them for their time, have them run a press conference for 8, 10, 12 hours, and explain the theory of the case from the federal end and what they were trying to do. Here's the federal crime, the allegation or information that a federal crime took place. Here's where we went in our investigation. This was the predication that was used for the opening EC, the electronic communication that allowed us to even open this and signed off on this investigation. Here's why we did this. Here's the processes we served. We did some subpoenas. We did some search warrants. We got these digital search warrants. We grabbed all this stuff. This is what it meant. This is what it didn't mean. This is where we continued to investigate. These are the dead ends, and here's why we thought they were dead ends and why we didn't continue on. Here's where political pressure was applied, and we weren't allowed to continue under previous administration, whatever it may be. We would have loved to investigate this further, but it was not allowed because of DOJ, Maine, or whatever. Imagine if you had that sort of transparency, because that's what transparency looks like. It says, here's the case. Here's why it's not going anywhere. They've already told you they're not going to prosecute anybody else. Or maybe Tom Massey's the problem. And that's it. He went on CNN and talked to Ro Khanna the other day, and this is what it sounded like.
I'm ready to do that if the victims want me to. They believe that the best way to get justice is to force the DOJ to release these names. I've already read one name in a committee with the FBI director there. That's Jess Staley. And again, he may or may not be guilty, but he's been accused by these victims, the lawyer tells me. And there are other names. I don't have them in my possession. But if the victims want to give them to me, I've expressed that I'm willing to do that. But again, the best way is to force the DOJ to release those names on those 302 forms.
Here's the issue. You can get names from victims, but if you're talking about teenage girls who are eyewitnesses to something, who make allegations like this person did this bad thing to me, and I remember them because after several years, I was able to see pictures in the newspaper and I knew it was him. Maybe that's them, maybe it's not. That's what the investigation was supposed to do. That's what we actually thought the FBI was going to do with these files. That's what we thought was going on. That's why you would actually want the people at the FBI to be the ones who give you the information. Victim accuses somebody. Turns out it wasn't actually that person. It was something else. Victims are always, they're doing the best they can, and oftentimes they don't have all the information. They oftentimes do not have credible information because their memories are false. Look, I've taken eyewitness testimony of people that were rape victims. I'm using the air quotes right now if you're listening. Rape victims. And then they told you a story and you're like, that's utterly unbelievable. That's physically impossible. And by the way, when I went and pulled security camera footage at the casino where you were, or at the houses of your neighbors who you claim like there was someone chasing you down on an empty road, there was only one car. Maybe because you were hammered drunk. Maybe because you made it all up because you and your girlfriend were having a fight. And you decided to pancake a freaking pine tree and then go land on top of a Subaru in somebody else's yard when you ramped off a freaking boulder doing 50 miles an hour in your beautiful pickup truck. When you get eyewitnesses' testimony, a lot of times it's really crap. But it doesn't mean all of it is crap, and it doesn't mean all of it is true. So what you do, especially if you're a Tom Massey and you're trying to be sensible, you say, okay, I have these allegations. Some may be credible, some maybe not. If only we could go to the people who were tasked with investigating this story and sussing out what was true and false, that didn't have any sort of requirement to come to one conclusion or another. That should be the FBI. That should be what our DOJ does. And that should be what our legal system is designed to do. I've said it here many times. It's one of the most poignant things that former AUSA, that's assistant United States attorney, federal prosecutor, and then defense attorney for a bunch of J6ers, a guy named Bill Shipley said to me. He said, the government's job is to suss out what is the correct and proper process. They should not have an interest in outcome. We know that our government cares about outcomes, right? We do know that. That's what's happening now. If our government only cared about process, then it wouldn't matter. It's like, look, we took all these allegations. These girls allege that this person, these are the people we were able to clear because they were never there. We had some exculpatory information. We found out they were never in the same area. They couldn't have been there. You know, they had this going on. They were in hospital, blah, blah, blah. These people were unsubstantiated, but there were lots of allegations. So we investigated, but we couldn't find out here or there. So we didn't ever have the ability to bring a credible case. And then these people we think probably did it, but we were stopped from political pressure. That would be an uninterested, disconnected third party, which is what American society is based on. We outsource justice. Because if you don't do that, then you get people who start doing posse justice, which is what I continue to see people on the right and the left are both suggesting. Maybe we just arm up and do this ourselves. Maybe we can't trust the system anymore. Maybe we can't rely on this system that's been in place for 250 years because it has fallen under the weight of its own corruption. And that's the time when you hear people say, when do we get to use the guns? And I know that the hour is late when people on the political left that think guns are bad, okay, and that you shouldn't own them to begin with, when those people start thinking, maybe we should have guns to defend ourselves against a corrupt system. It's like, hallelujah, welcome to the team. We don't have to agree on politics. We can just agree that Americans, citizens, not subjects, get to make certain decisions. And then what do you find? The Trump administration steps up and does the most leftist thing that I can imagine. A Bill Clinton era, assault weapons ban style statement from somebody who's in charge of the District of Columbia. When you have your Judge Jeanine, a Fox News personality, someone who was hired because of their PR understanding, comes out and tells you, I'm a high-heeled gun owner, whatever the shit that means. And there are obviously rules that you have to follow from the most pro-Second Amendment team ever. Now you're going to make me side with people like the New York Times and lefties getting guns. I don't care. I mean, be responsible, people. Learn what you're doing. I don't think they're a threat to me. I've seen their groupings. But sure, welcome to the team. Join Team Liberty and team like human beings who don't trust government.
How much have you shot before?
Just like 22 rifles in Boy Scouts.
Yeah,
Here in Minnesota, people who've never considered owning a gun are now learning how to use one, as immigration operations and protests have upended daily life. In the weeks since federal agents arrived here, and after the fatal shootings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, firearm permit applications have surged. Data obtained by the New York Times shows a sharp increase in permits to carry across Minneapolis and surrounding counties compared with the same time last year.
You just show me your two-hand position. All right. Good.
Alex von Bradenfels calls himself a
His name is Alex von Bradenfels. Sorry.
quote, nerdy software engineer, and says that he's not the kind of person you'd expect to see showing up at a gun range.
I would never have seen myself getting a gun if not for, the government coming here and seeing them violate people's rights incredibly violently. The first time that I went to a protest, a federal agent pointed a gun at me for filming him.
I'm just going to pause and show you what they show is someone showing that's a beanbag or a tear gas canister. So that's not a gun. That's a less than lethal delivery device, but sure.
You know, I was always in support of gun control, but recent events here, killing of Alex Preddy, definitely changed that for me.
All right, so AR-15. Magazine will go in right there. And this is your
I love that the guy has the Palestinian neck scarf too. This is the gun instructor.
charging handle. Good.
Not everyone buying a gun wants to defend themselves from federal agents. Some, like Aaron Giddens, feel the need to arm themselves because anti-ICE protests.
I have no fear of ICE being here. It's the effects of ICE being here and all the protesting. If you're going to a protest, I mean, why do you feel like you need to carry there, right?
No, right. I think you should definitely carry there. Like big crowds, you should definitely carry. Here's the funny thing. When people on the left, people on the right, and then people like this lady who just want to be left alone and think that it's kind of scary that a bunch of people are showing up and learning how to use guns or that they're making a bunch of noise outside their neighborhood, also start going, okay, now we're arming up. People arm up before conflict. Regular people who are way behind the curve, the squishy middle people that didn't carry and didn't care. Those people are now worried and concerned. And the New York Times is covering it, of all things. That tells you where we're at right now. The only way that this gets fixed is that people go hard in the paint and they do the thing that Trump said he was going to do, which was go hard to the right. Because that's where the middle of America sits. It actually sits to the right of the Republican Party. And we didn't get that. I think a lot of people, historically speaking, you could make a really easy argument. And by the way, I have. That's one of the things that I've done on this podcast. It's one of the things I've done every single time I've got out and spoken on national media. The federal government is the enemy because the federal government doesn't serve you. It serves itself. It serves its own masters. And so when you understand this sort of thing, then you start getting worried about it and try to do something. Can I show you guys stuff that really bothered me? All right, let's get into the corruption thing here. America is captivated by kidnapping stories. I don't know why that is, but they are. They love the idea of the true crime. Somebody got kidnapped. There's some human drama. There's a missing person. So there's imminence. It doesn't matter whether it's a fake story, like the story of Silence of the Lambs, which was all based on kidnapping, right? And there was a senator's daughter and she was taken. And so Clarice Starling, the intrepid FBI agent who was also just a trainee and had no business going out into the field, gets used as bait because men in the FBI that are senior executives are without scruples, right? And they were also trying to bang Clarice Starling. So that was kind of creepy. There was this whole undertone during that time. Everybody's excited about the story of the Guthrie kidnapping. And so this name pops up into prominence. And I promised you I'd get there, so here we go. The name pops up into prominence, and it's this guy named Heath Yankee, and he is the special agent in charge of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. It means he runs the office where that investigation is being done. So he's the one that's doing all the press work. And so here we go. This is from Valley News Live. NDSU grad, former West Fargo police chief, is leading the Guthrie investigation. Now, for awareness, people, being in charge of the field office doesn't mean you have anything to do with the investigation at all, other than take credit, just like Kash Patel doesn't do any investigations. He's just the guy that's in charge of the agency, and so he gets the credit, he gets to do the PR. But it is interesting when you start exposing people with these names, and then you find out the history that exists in the background on who he is. Let's read their little story here. The FBI SAC, or special agent in charge of the Nancy Guthrie disappearance, is Heath Yankee. I think that's how he says his name. Yankee, doesn't matter to me. Yankee served as the West Fargo police chief from July 2017 to March of 2020, when he resigned to join the FBI. That seems like an interesting, there's no way, right? How could he be in charge of a field office at this point when it was 5 years ago that he was working in West Fargo PD? That's not how FBI agents work. Well, there's a reason. When joining the West Fargo Police Department in 2017, he brought more than 15 years of professional experience, most recently as a supervisory special agent with the FBI. So there it is in the story. He's a graduate of North Dakota State University. He holds a law degree from the University of North Dakota. Collegiate career, he had honors in academics and athletics. Sounds like a stand-up awesome guy, right? And then they go on to talk about what's going on with the kidnapping. Okay. Here's another story. Former West Fargo police chief leads FBI investigation into Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. So they go on and they talk about who this guy is. And what they miss is the backstory. You know, the thing that Kash Patel didn't know, which is why he's in that position. And why, I'm being told, he was already selected to be the assistant director of the Criminal Investigations Division, which would be the crown jewel job of a criminal investigator in the FBI. You want to know why nothing changes is because the same people and the same funnel of scumbags continue to operate, and they operate at all these levels of government where nobody is paying attention. And so you get ignorant, wannabes. You get guys that want to wear a cool raid jacket and have an HRT patch on their shoulder. There's Kash Patel on the screen right now. And they don't know who it is that they're hiring to do the work that they're hiring to do. So let's go to Heath's LinkedIn, shall we? He was an attorney for 2 years at the Broyce Law Firm in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And then he spent 12 years and 11 months, almost 13 years at the FBI from 2004 to 2017. And he worked out of the San Antonio field office and FBI headquarters in the Civil Rights Unit. That unit in and of itself is questionable. It's a sketchy ass place to be. And they do a lot of sketchy things that are very politically motivated, as you can imagine. And he was also at the Kansas City field office. And he left as a supervisory special agent, which is a GS-14. That means frontline agents are GS-10 to 13. That's what I was doing. First line, my boss was a GS-14. That's what he did. Why did he leave? Well, the story is not here on LinkedIn. The story is all over my DMs. It's in my emails. It's in the tip line that we have. And the story is that he started sleeping with what is this called? A supervisory intelligence analyst. That's the position that George Hill used to hold. For those of you guys that remember, George Hill comes on the program occasionally. So a supervisory intel person. And her name was Trisha. And she was married to a police officer who was a detective in the Casey, Missouri Police Department. So he started sleeping with someone else's wife, and he was also married at the time. And this is all credible information coming in. It's an open secret in the Kansas City division where people are very incensed because he wrecked those quote unquote local partnership deals that they had. He cheated on his wife, and she cheated on her husband. So we have law enforcement, and she was in the office. So we have an inter-office romance that wasn't supposed to happen because that's a policy problem. We have adultery, which is a real problem because if you're willing to betray your wife, how are we going to trust you not to betray the country in the national security field? And that's really the question. George Hill and I have talked about this previously. There used to be a standard in national security that if they found out under a polygraph or a background investigation that you, in fact, had been unfaithful to your spouse, they made you confess to your spouse in person in front of FBI personnel or other intelligence community personnel, depending on what agency you're with. And then those people would then say, well, at least you can't be exploited by this secret anymore. But what kind of things would you be willing to do? Now, apparently this woman, Trish, had all kinds of other problems. Guess what? She still works there. And she works for the woman we mentioned earlier. She works for Shannon Perry. Now, this guy had to leave because he embarrassed the department. He embarrassed the agency, the FBI in that area. And so he did. And he went. And then you can see as we go back here, here's where his timeline picks up. July 17th, he moves and becomes a police chief in some nowhere West Fargo Police Department. Amazingly, I had the former Attorney General of North Dakota jump into my my comments and say he's a great guy, and they never disappoint. In fact, I may even we're going to go find that right now. Let's just do that real quickly. The former Attorney General pops up and says what? Oh, he was a good dude. I met him. You're probably like a superstar, Mr. Christian guy. What's wrong with you? I'm just scrolling through my feed here. Sorry, let me find it for you because it's actually kind of amazing. They never really disappoint. He pops in and says something to the effect of, let's read it. You seem like you must be a big deal. He's talking to me. You seem like you must be some sort of a saint, strong Christian or something. Heaven knows that God called all of us to spend our time assessing and judging everyone around him. This is Drew Wrigley. He's the former Attorney General and Lieutenant Governor of North Dakota. Well, guess what? You just type his name in and type in the word scandal after it, and what does it pop up? North Dakota Attorney General, former Lieutenant Governor Drew Wrigley faced a significant scandal in 2015 when he what? Oh, he also admitted to having an extramarital affair. But it didn't even stop his political career. It eventually did tank his marriage, and they divorced in 2023, separated in 23, finalized in 2025. So another guy who did adultery excused the guy who did adultery, and then that guy who did adultery from the FBI ends up where? Right back in charge. He got brought back in. They took him in as a special agent, probably like utilized the fact that they needed people who had specialized experiences as cybercrime investigators, and he probably had some training certificates there. They also put him in the section that was called the public sector or the private sector coordinator, which is a bullshit job in the FBI. And he went to Missouri for 1 year and 7 months. In 1.5 years, then he got promoted to headquarters under Chris Wray. Oh. In 2021, he became the unit chief for money laundering, forfeiture, and the bank fraud unit. As usual, you don't have to have any special skills in any particular thing to become an FBI supervisory person at headquarters. So there he goes. Then he becomes the unit chief here for virtual assets. Then he became the ASAC at the white collar crime branch in none other than Houston, Texas, November 2022, June of 2024. By the way, do you know how he got back into the FBI in 2017? He's buddies with a guy named Aaron Tapp. Aaron Tapp was one of the people, he was the deputy assistant director in charge of the criminal division when they were doing Arctic Frost. And Kash Patel removed him while he was at Boondoggle Ranch down in San Antonio in that area, got rid of him. So Aaron Tapp got fired, but he was the quote unquote rabbi that got this guy back into the office from what we understand. And then Houston, November of 2022. Who else was in Houston in November of 2022 working at the exact same level? There were probably 3 ASACs, if I had to guess, in Houston in 2022. So they would have worked together every single day. Who would have been in charge of that space? Oh, the FBI co-deputy director, Christopher Rea. And here he is right here. Boop. January 2020, April 2023, overlapping that November 2022 and on, assistant special agent in charge for criminal in the Houston, Texas office. There it is. That's how. The number 2 in the FBI right now was buddies with, worked on every single day with this guy, Yankee, who brought back in even after he was an adulterous piece of crap that ruined the relationship with local partners, the real cops doing cop work. Quite incredible. And then he climbed the ranks up. There you go. This guy went from there as the ASAC in Houston, became the chief of the Cyber Criminal Division Operations, another SES. This is a job in FBI headquarters. 24 to 25. Who was in charge then? Oh, that actually spanned the time that Chris Wray was there, but he was promoted by Chris Wray and then promoted by none other than Dan Bongino and FBI Director Kash Patel, because in June of 2025, when they were in charge, he became the special agent in charge of Phoenix, which is where he is now. And he's been promoted again to go be the AD of CID, Criminal Investigation Division, which would be the most important job in the FBI if they were only a law enforcement agency, and they couldn't even get anyone to do that job. So who do they get? The guy that's compromised, that was banging around on his wife and broke the most important vow that he made. Forget the American people. He couldn't even be faithful to his wife. By the way, he ended up marrying that other woman that he was cheating with. So now they all get to live in squalor and in wretched sort of villainy, and they get to hang out in the Hoover building together. So that's amazing. Congrats to all of them. Congrats to us. Just remember, just because you didn't see it happen doesn't mean it didn't actually happen. Just because somebody that was in charge there told you that something good was happening doesn't mean it wasn't actually evil people getting promoted.
Just because you don't see something happening doesn't mean it isn't happening. I'm not telling you this is the end of everything. You should stop demanding. I'm not telling you any of that. If you think I'm telling you that, this isn't the show for you. Just because something hasn't happened yet does not mean it's not happening. Do you know how many posts and other things I read during our time there? People say, man, Benghazi, 0 arrests. Meanwhile, Kash, me, Pam, and the judge were working on this case. We can't go out and tell you we're working on it. You don't think there are other things happening right now? Demand the best. Demand the finest. The government works for you. I worked for you. Kash works for you. Pam works for you. Janine, the president. But I said to you on social media and elsewhere, just because you don't see something happening doesn't mean it isn't happening.
Yeah. Just because you didn't see it doesn't mean it wasn't happening. Just because you didn't realize that a bunch of scumbags and sexually compromised human beings were getting promoted at the FBI before doesn't mean they're not still getting promoted. Of course they still are. That's what the agency does. That's why it doesn't serve you. By the way, let's hit that story. U.S. arrests suspect in the 2012 Benghazi consulate attack. That came out over the weekend. It was like a Friday into the weekend. The United States has arrested a person suspected of playing a central role in the 2012 attack on the consulate. This was in Benghazi, Libya. The person's name is Zubayar al-Bakash, and he's been extradited to the United States, and he will face murder and arson and terrorism-related charges. 4 service members were killed. 4 personnel were killed September 11th, 2012 during that incident, originally thought to be a spontaneous reaction to protests, but was later identified as deliberate attacks. Oh, well, at least Reuters is getting to that fact. You know what's the problem, though? The problem is that when you go over there and you look them up in the DOJ's thing, what they don't tell you is how they got him into custody, which is that the Libyans already got him because the locals got him. The FBI doesn't just steal credit from local law enforcement agencies. They'll actually steal credit from local law enforcement agencies in other countries too. So here you have it. Their triumphant press release, 3rd co-conspirator in fatal Benghazi attacks, Dan Bongino taking credit for it. That's kind of interesting. And then you go over here and you find out, the Trump administration captured him. He was handed over to U.S. officials overseas. Why was he handed over? Because he was already in custody there. Oops. Here's my favorite. This is my favorite. This is how you know that what I'm telling you is true. The officials declined to discuss precisely how al-Bakush came into the United States custody. Patel said he was transferred into U.S. custody by foreign officials, but declined to identify the country involved. There's some other reporting that says it was by some local organization in Libya that had it. Some local municipality had him in custody. And by the way, he'd already had a stroke and he was totally off the battlefield and he was unable to be functional and he wasn't a threat to anybody anymore. So yeah, we only catch the ones that are enfeebled and not actually causing any real problems. You guys are welcome to follow people like Sarah Adams if you want to find more about that. They've been following the Libya thing. She said he was absolutely a bad guy, but he was no longer relevant. And so, yeah, they got him. But just because you guys don't recognize it happening doesn't mean it didn't happen, right? And who knows how long he's been in custody over there. Politico, that's what's on there. I'll put the link up. You guys can read it. It doesn't say exactly when he came in. Nobody really knows exactly how that went down. What we do know is just because you didn't see it happening doesn't mean it wasn't happening. Just because some other group arrested him overseas for something else and the United States was able to get him into custody doesn't mean that the FBI can't take credit for it, right? Just because you don't know who's being promoted inside these agencies that are subjugating the will of the people to do the thing that we thought, move the envelope back to normal 30 years ago. I've told you I thought MAGA meant make America constitutional again. In some ways, it also just means the nostalgic idea of it was better in the 80s and 90s. Can we just move the needle back to a time when America thought it was the good guys, when we didn't think that everybody was wrong, that Americans were not actually the real threat to America, which is kind of where we sit right now. And one of the things that we didn't used to do, and I don't know why this started, but we should probably stop this. It's going to be too late. So like whenever we reform, because I don't think the American Republic is going to be able to continue on this rickety scaffolding. I'm not the only one who thinks that, by the way. People on the left think the same thing as me. There's no way that this rickety, like built up structure that no longer can support its own weight continues on. Not when the people that you outsourced the revolution to didn't do the revolution. I think it was Tom Renz that said it the other day on X. He said Americans who wanted everything to just go back to some sense of normalcy from 30 years ago, they outsourced the revolution to one man, Donald Trump. And he said that he had it. He said he figured it out. And instead what we got was some of it, but then just not it. And then a bunch of people that are corrupt and running a bunch of interference on him. What I'd like to see is that America is for Americans and that we don't elect people from, I don't know, freaking Chinese to come step up and represent you. I am flooded right now with non-American born options for national and local offices, and I am freaking flabbergasted. Allow me to just say this real clearly so that you guys can weigh in on this. Please leave a comment on this if you have some thought on it. What conditions would exist for you to move to another nation? Take your pick. Maybe it's Italy. Maybe it's England. Maybe it's India. Maybe it's Venezuela. I don't know. What would cause you to move to another country, live there for 4 years or so? Let's say you speak the language, and then think, I've been here for 4 or 5 years. There's some shit around here that I think I could really fix. Yeah, I'm new here, but why don't I run for office to be able to go in and change things in such a way that my vision of what this country that I'm not from should be? Can you imagine the freaking audacity of doing something like that? there are some seriously audacious people that continue to step in, and they have mistaken the kindness for weakness. They have mistaken the idea that America, because we invite people to come in from anywhere and anybody can become an American. I have no idea why that makes you think that you should be in charge when you've been here for a few minutes. But this guy is a representative. This is Gene Wu. He's a state representative in Texas. He's also born in Chinese. And he's telling you the real problem. It's almost like they bring their Chinese shitty ideas and then they want to come out there and start talking about the sort of communist left revolution. In many ways, we could eliminate a bunch of problems by not having foreigners hold American offices. And by foreigners, I mean people that naturalize the U.S. Maybe sit it out until you've actually grown up here your whole life. Because some of us just are waiting. We're not interested in getting into this. It's like there must be someone who knows more than me. That's, I think, what most of us think. We don't want to get involved in it. I don't want to run for office. But do we not actually have people in America that want to be in office? Maybe that's what has to happen. Maybe we need to have an actual requirement, which we've never had before, that you are from here, raised here, and actually call this place home, and that you don't have some sort of foreign loyalty like this guy.
I always tell people the day the Latino, African American, Asian, and other communities realize that they share the same oppressor is the day we start winning. Because we are the majority in this country now. We have the ability to take over this country and to do what is needed for everyone and to make things fair. But the problem is our communities are divided. They're completely divided. And I talk about this.
What in the actual shit are we doing? Excuse my language on this. I'm flabbergasted. This is his Wikipedia page. Eugene Wu, born in Guangdong Province, China, emigrated here when he was a young child. I don't know how old he was. Your parents came here, why? Because of the opposite of all that crap. That's why they came here. I'm sure of it, because that's why people came here. Then he was educated in an Episcopal school. He lived in Houston. He went to the Texas A&M. He went to University of Texas at Austin, got a law degree. You got to live the American dream. You came to this country and you got to be something. And now you're telling people that you should be organizing based on race and color of skin, and that we should we should unite against the white oppressors? Is that really what he said? Hold on. Did he really call everyone an oppressor? I got to go back to my clip here. There he is.
I always tell people the day the Latino, African American, Asian, and other communities realize that they share the same oppressor is the day we start winning.
Got it. Right. Yeah. Because white people are oppressing you. They oppressed you so badly that you were able to get a 1, 2, 3 public university school educations to get educated as one of the top educated people in this country. And then for some reason, we let you hold state office. That's how freaking oppressed you are. Regular people are sick of this stuff. That's what bacon cheeseburger nationalism looks like. You guys are saying, I see people in the chat saying, yeah, run for office. Why? Listen, I'm consistent in my beliefs. I don't think that there's a difference between Republicans and Democrats. I don't think that we actually have regular free and fair elections. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have impeachments after the midterms. I think those are definitely going to happen. But I think that most of the stuff that we're seeing, and this is just my opinion now, and I don't even have the ability to substantiate it. This is like freewheeling, no facts behind it, just what makes sense to me. It makes more sense that what we see is media narrative that just helps excuse the theft of elections. That's what it looks like. It looks like it's just cover. Like we're living in a stupid psyop where they run stories. It makes you believe, oh, there must be all this resistance to Donald Trump. That's why he's going to lose the midterms. Nah, I think it's theatrical. I think Lindsey Graham crying, he still wins. I don't know why. I think acting like Tom Massey is the problem. I think he still wins his primary. He's still 2-1 against his opponent, who's the most close opponent. It's just, you need foils. You need people to say are the bad guy in your own party. You need to have fake conflicts, just like WWE wrestling. You need to give people a reason to think that they should stay at home and not do something, which I keep getting people telling me that this is all part of the plan. And it doesn't help that Donald Trump and the Ed Martins and all the people that are part of the Q psyop crap that even played it, even if they think it's bullshit, which they do. I think educated people think it's silly. The people that play into that like it could be real, The real psyop is making you think that you were part of something so you would wait for the solution to come up. And the solution is it's all going to fall down under its own weight. Just matters how long it's going to be. And we've been rushing towards it. We went from $7 trillion in debt when I was in high school to coming up on 40. For what? We continued to have people claim that there's such a thing as a rhino, and your political right in this country moved further left than the people who were the political left in this country when I was in high school. So it can't continue on much longer. The amount of progress that's been made on that agenda that went back 100 and something years, it continues to march out at such a rate that we are clearly in the high-speed death wobble at the bottom of the hill. People thought that they elected Donald Trump to hit the brakes and do a U-turn. And Donald Trump barely even took his foot off the gas on a lot of these things. And he's been focusing in on things like foreign policy, which he probably does a really good job on. Ben Shapiro says it. I believe it. It's not my thing. Guess what? You could be awesome at foreign policy, and you could absolutely get devastated domestically because you didn't build a political right into this country. And there is no political right. Here's Melania Trump telling you who her husband, like what she told her husband. You tell me that this is what you guys voted for. Do you guys know this?
Right, that you are staunchly for a woman's right to choose. You are pro-choice. You write, it is imperative to guarantee that women have autonomy in deciding their preference in having children based on their own convictions, free from intervention or pressure from government. Had you spoken to President Trump about that before you wrote that in the book?
Yes, he knew my position and my beliefs since the day we met. And I believe in individual freedom. I want to decide what I want to do with my body. I think I don't want government in my personal business. I think it's very important. And as I said in the book, and it's very well explained in the chapter, what does really my body, my choice means.
Yeah, roger that. Okay. You know what you missed there? The 90s version, the caveat that says safe, legal, and rare. So there you go. And don't worry about the baby. That's not even a real person. They even knew that in the 90s. In the 90s, they would have still admitted that. And even today, they tend to admit it. It's foreign-born people telling people in America how America's supposed to be. It blows my mind. Let me give you one more example of it. This is happening in Minnesota. I just had this clip sitting around. It's like, okay, when do we just get to admit that people that are from here, that grew up here, that remember normal here, still kind of have the same idea? And that everything else that's going on in politics is to the left of that. That's how I know that it doesn't. There has to be a balance. Even for the left to get what they want, there has to be a balance. You guys in the chat are talking about the Dave references. If you missed Friday's show with Steve Friend, Americans thought they got Dave to come in. Dave, the movie Dave. Go watch it. It was a 90s movie talking about the moment, what we were at that moment in the 90s, where people were looking around at the country and they're going, man, we're really coming to a turning point here. Do you know what changed the Dave mentality? 9/11. In 2001, Americans basically united behind tyranny, the Patriot Act, foreign wars, a bunch of distractions, because we saw something horrific and made everybody go like, holy shit, some buildings fell down in our biggest city. We have to do something. And so we united behind a common enemy. Dave was a regular guy who stepped in to pretend to be the president because the president did some immoral thing like had sex with somebody out of his marriage and then had a stroke. And so they brought in someone to cover. And what he ended up being was a guy who worked at a temp agency and got people jobs for a living and had friends who ran small businesses. And he did what we thought Donald Trump was going to do, which was going to stabilize the money supply in this country, stabilize the idea that we shouldn't spend money that we haven't earned, that we would actually have a balanced budget. And we haven't done that in forever. So people thought they were getting Dave. People thought they were getting a U-turn that goes back to what was supposed to happen. Nobody's even saying you got to go back to the 1950s. I mean, if you ask me, I'd go back to 1905. That would be fine for a lot of reasons. But that's not what was on the table. The election of 2024 said, can we do a U-turn and get back into the 90s, which is essentially what Donald Trump ran on. And the answer is the machine is so far gone, you can't do it. And we have Somalis that are upset. The Somalis are upset about being Somali and maybe getting talked about while there's a massive immigration push in their community.
I personally have been stopped in my own neighborhood where they show up almost every single day. to be asked to identify myself. Jesus. They took photos to scan our faces so that they can put in their databases. Nobody's asking what they're going to do with that. They've detained U.S. citizens in front of me while I'm begging them to let them go. My own kids' school in middle school and high school went into lockdown because of fear of ICE being outside the school. Never imagined that we will go on a lockdown when there's a law enforcement outside.
You never imagined that this would happen when you were growing up in Somalia. Muslim guy says, oh, they detained us. Communist in the background says, Jesus. Peak irony. Man who's not from here, was raised in not here, has significant expectations while holding public office in this country. That is so outside the realm of normal 1990s reality. Again. Was this a guy that was out there saying, hey, by the way, these people are cheating the system. These people came here illegally. These people are defrauding our government. These people are taking money that does not belong to them. And I want this country to succeed because my loyalty is to this nation that I have come in and has given me so many things that I can wear a suit and not worry about being dragged in the streets and killed because of my political beliefs, which may be adverse to somebody else's, that I don't have to live in a shithole country like Somalia. No. Was that guy doing the useful thing, which was pointing out all of the problems within his own community and saying, I understand why you're doing this because there's all these issues? No. He's bitching about them shutting down a school because of something that had to be done, which is the actual authority and the power of the federal government. 90s Democrats wouldn't have fought about this. 90s Democrats said that illegal aliens working in the United States were taking things from Americans. So this graphic that we're showing on the screen here with a house divided in America and the left and the right polling. The funny thing is that the political right in this country is really the center, and the center is not even on this screen. And I guess the left and the right should be on the opposite side. So maybe I'll do a reverse. I'll flip it. I'll flip it around. You guys get how problematic this is. We can't return to a status quo because the status quo has shifted way too far to be able to recover from it at this point. That's what I think. And that doesn't mean that America ends, by the way. So let me just give a message of hope. I think that it means that things are going to devolve back to the states, and we're going to end up in a like Articles of Confederation. If I was going to guess in my lifetime where things end up going, I think America ends up in an Articles of Confederation. Think about all the reasons as we reflect on the 250th anniversary of the Declaration. Think about all the issues that the current federal constitution tried to solve and why we had such a failure in the original thing, which was a loose conglomeration of states. We had external threats where other nations wanted to come in. I mean, we had the Brits still invade us all the way into like the 1800s, right? We had the War of 1812 where they came in here to the United States. So we still had externalized threats that were threatening the capabilities of this nation. We didn't have a good system of money or commerce, so we couldn't figure that out. So you had to have some sort of regulations to be able to do that. We didn't have a roadway system. We didn't have railroads. We didn't have planes. We didn't have any way to interface with people all around. And all of those problems actually got handled under the current Constitution. And you can imagine that a US 2.0 would actually go back to whatever the version 0.5 was, which was that a loose conglomeration of states with the overall and the superior power being in the states, which is where it was meant to be in the first place. That could actually work if you didn't have to build up all the infrastructure that we built up over the last couple hundred years, which we've done. So I actually think that this thing is not the worst thing in the world, but just watching it happen, it is going to be tumultuous and it is frustrating. And there's a lot of people that are going to be very disaffected. So I hope people don't get completely disengaged. And I hope that people don't look around and say like, well, that's the end of it. All the zombie apocalypse is up next, because that's not what I think happens. I think that your neighborhoods will continue, just like when you see the federal government shutdown. By the way, we're looming towards another shutdown, or at least a partial shutdown over ICE funding of all things. And when it happens, you won't notice. You just won't. It won't happen for you because the things that matter to you are actually in your state, in your county, in your city governments. The things that are closest to you are still the things that matter the most. We're just preoccupied by this theatrical presentation that goes on where you pretend like we get a choice on what goes on in the national sphere. So there you go. Continue to vote if you guys want to carry on. I don't think you shouldn't not vote. Doesn't mean that the charade is there, but the things that are going to matter most and the things that I know the least about, it turns out, almost always is the localities. because I keep moving because I haven't been able to put my feet down. We had a conversation with Marcus Allen over the weekend, and he's in kind of a rough spot, and many people in America empathize with this scenario. This is the 4th house that I've lived in since the FBI came at my family. So permanence and a lack of consistency, it feels very strong to me. I think I empathize with it more than almost anybody that you're going to find in any kind of media position right now, because we're constantly on the move to try to get our feet underneath us because we saw what it looked like. We understood what weaponized government was, and they still haven't fixed that. If they can't fix simple things like what happened under the Biden administration for guys that were literally not political, if the left talks to me today and thinks that I'm reasonable, and the right used to talk to me when Biden was in office because they thought I was reasonable, it tells you that we've pissed off all the people because I'm actually sitting to the right of center in the American middle from 30 years ago. So that's what I think. And that's today's program. Should we do something fun? This is what a lot of people did. This is why a lot of people stayed on the couch. This is why a lot of people are waiting. Let me disabuse you of this notion. We've played this video before. It's one of the best. This is the Q PSYOP, and we'll end today's show with a thought on deep into the rabbit's rectum.
Hello, I'm from the U.S. government. Does something feel wrong in the world, but you can't put your finger on it? Are you yearning to fight injustice and be part of something bigger? Do you do your own research? If so, you've been chosen to participate in our new PSYOP, QAnon. PSYOPs are usually carried out by our intelligence agencies in countries we've invaded or whose governments we've overthrown, in order to convince the local population that we're there to help them. QAnon is just like that, except the target isn't a foreign population. It's you. And the government we're planning to overthrow is... Follow the white rabbit. At the heart of this PSYOP is Q, a government insider who will give you advance warning about major events, like the arrest of Hillary and deep state leaders, which never happened, and the end of the Democratic Party in 2018, who actually went on to win the House that year. And if years of fake predictions start to get you down, don't worry. Trust the plan. The best part of this PSYOP is you'll believe you're in a PSYOP, except that's not the PSYOP you're actually in, but the PSYOP where we let you think you're in a PSYOP. PSYOPception. Q-proof. Joining QAnon is easy because at its core there are some truths. Like, the media really does lie to you. There really are powerful predators out there, and there really is a global pedophile ring that ritually abuses kids. But as you follow Q's droppings, you'll gradually LARP yourself deep into the rabbit's rectum, where you'll find others who yearn to fight injustice just like you. The 5G crew, the Plandemic crowd, the FEMA camps, and chemtrail folks too. All LARP together into a single LARP we can control. Where we LARP one, we LARP all. In exchange for all this entertainment and newfound sense of purpose, all we ask for in return is your help. No, you fucking idiots, not to arrest Hillary. Q has convinced patriots, even the guy who spent decades warning you about the police state and martial law. That martial law is now a good thing. What's that? When do we take down the deep state? Aw, honey. The guy who exposed the real deep state is being tortured by it right now. And where are you? Oh, that's right. Q told you to trust the plan and have a big circle jerk on Aiken. The Great Awakening. And that's the purpose of QAnon, to convince those who would normally be on the front line of fighting our shitfuckery to sit by and watch as we prosecute your truth tellers, purge your justice system, and rat fuck this election. QAnon. Nothing can stop what's coming, because you'll be sitting on your ass when it does.
We don't have to agree with everything in that particular little video. Obviously, it's satirical and it's meant to make you laugh a little bit. It also is reminding you that nobody's going to stop what's coming because they're sitting on their ass at home waiting for someone to fix it up. The Great Awakening is one of my favorites, by the way, where we LARP one, we LARP all. That's what I got for today's program. I'm going to put all the links here as comments in the YouTube and in the Rumble. If you guys want to read this, if you want to look at people's LinkedIn, I will give you links to those. You can see where the links are. You can't see the sources of the people that are sharing stuff inside the FBI. But let me just tell you something. The business as usual continues. And so you can't do reform with the same people. This is the problem that Donald Trump faces, whether it be at DOJ's level or whether it be at the top. Reform with the same people doesn't work. It's Machiavellian. It's been around for 500 years. Everybody understood this. They used to know exile or execution are the only ways you clean and purge your government. We've done neither. So we're going to have to keep going down whatever road it is. And I don't know where it ends. But like I said, I think it ends somewhere like we just talked about a moment ago. So there it is. Share the show if you guys like. Give us a thumbs up over on Rumble and on YouTube. We appreciate that. Guys, support us over on Spotify. If you want to make sure you're following over there, KyleSeraphinshow.com is the way to get to it. Download the app if you guys want. I think Spotify is a really good way to listen to podcasts because you get video and audio. And I appreciate them. I appreciate all of you. Thanks for listening. Look forward to seeing you guys again this week. Who knows what's coming? I know we'll just try to keep calling it out as we see it. regular people from not too long ago, the political right in this country, which doesn't exist at the political party level. Okay, have a good day. God bless you.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.